Rain soaked through her dress as she pushed past the guards, her heart hammering against her ribs like it wanted out. "He's not dead!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the funeral silence like a gunshot. The mourners froze. The coffin, black, polished, surrounded by men in tailored suits, seemed to breathe danger itself. Every eye turned toward her, including his. The Mafia boss, the man whose son lay inside that coffin. But when the lid creaked open and she reached inside, what she found would unravel everything she thought she knew about death, loyalty, and love. What secret was buried inside that coffin, and why did the boy's heart still beat? Rain hammered against the cracked windows of the clinic, the sound drowning out the hum of broken fluorescent lights. Elena Rivera's hands trembled as she tightened the strap around a patient's arm, exhaustion threading through her like smoke. The night shift was endless. Fevers, bruises, loneliness. She'd learned to live quietly, to heal strangers, and then return to her small apartment where her daughter waited with a smile that made every ache worth it. But tonight, something different arrived through the clinic doors. A stretcher rolled in, 2 men in dark coats pushing it fast. The boy on it couldn't have been older than 10, his skin pale as moonlight, chest barely moving. "No police, no questions," one man said sharply. His accent was heavy, command laced in every word. Elena froze. She'd seen his kind before, danger cloaked in suits. But when she pressed her stethoscope to the boy's chest, her breath caught. There was a heartbeat. Weak, faint, but there. "He's alive," she whispered. "Not anymore," the man replied coldly, signing papers that marked the boy as deceased. He ordered the body to be released for immediate burial. Her throat went dry. Burial? The word echoed inside her skull like thunder. When the men left, she checked the boy again, pulse flickering under her fingers like a candle in wind. Someone wanted him dead. Whispers spread among the nurses, rumors of a child connected to a powerful name, Alessandro Moretti, the man who ruled the city's shadows. The Mafia boss. Elena felt her stomach twist. If the boy was his, touching this case meant ruin. Yet she couldn't let go. She found herself pressing her ear against his chest again, counting faint beats that refused to stop. "You're fighting," she murmured. "Don't you dare quit on me," hours blurred. Elena forged papers, wrote delayed release, then slipped into the ambulance bay as the men returned. The driver slammed the doors, muttering about the funeral scheduled before dawn. Funeral for a living child. She tried to stay still, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. As the vehicle drove away, panic surged through her chest. She could stay silent, keep her job, keep her daughter safe, or she could act. Elena tore off her gloves and ran. Rain cut across her face like shards of glass as she stole her coworker's car, tires screeching onto the wet road. The city blurred around her, neon, darkness, fear. Every mile closer to the cemetery felt like a heartbeat lost. She prayed she wasn't too late. When the iron gates appeared ahead, black and glistening under the storm, she slammed the brakes and stumbled out, her shoes sinking into mud. A sea of black umbrellas filled the distance. The coffin sat before a marble cross, surrounded by men in suits, faces carved with sorrow and danger. Her chest constricted. The boy's small coffin was about to be lowered. "No!" She gasped, running. The guards shouted, moving to block her, but adrenaline roared through her veins. She shoved past them, voice breaking through the storm. "He's not dead!" she screamed, slipping on the slick ground but not stopping. "He's still alive." The mourners froze, stunned. The air itself seemed to pause. Every eye turned toward her, wide, furious, disbelieving. At the front, a tall man in a black coat slowly raised his head, his gaze cutting through rain and silence like a blade. Alessandro Moretti. And just as her voice echoed across the graves, thunder cracked above, splitting the sky open. "He's not dead!" Elena cried again, breathless. defiant, unaware that this single moment would change everything she ever knew about life, death, and the power of one heartbeat. The cemetery fell silent the moment Elena's scream cut through the storm. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, turning the dirt to slick black mud. Her breath came in ragged bursts as she stumbled forward, soaked to the bone. Dozens of heads turned toward her. The mourners, the guards, the priest frozen mid-prayer. Every gaze was sharp, dangerous. At the center stood Alessandro Moretti, a figure carved in shadow and power. His black coat glistened under the rain, his eyes cold as winter steel. "Stop her!" one of the guards barked, lifting his weapon. "No!" Elena cried, holding out her trembling hands. "Please, don't! The boy's alive." The guards hesitated, glancing at Alessandro. He raised one hand, wordless authority rippling through the air. The weapons lowered. His stare locked onto Elena, piercing straight through her fear. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice low, dangerous. Elena could barely breathe. "Your son." "He's still breathing. I treated him. I saw his pulse." A flicker of emotion crossed his face, gone as quickly as it came. "My son is dead," he said with finality. "Do not make this harder than it already is." But she stepped closer, eyes wild. "He's not." "Please open the coffin." "I swear to you, he's still fighting." The priest muttered a prayer under his breath while the mourners whispered, some in disbelief, others in anger. The guards shifted uneasily, waiting for Alessandro's command. For a moment, only the sound of rain filled the silence. Then something faint, fragile, a sound like a sigh, broke through. Elena froze. So did he, another gasp. Small, shallow, but real, Alessandro's eyes widened. The world seemed to tilt. Then chaos erupted. Guards rushed forward, shouting. The coffin lid flew open and gasps filled the air. The boy's lips were pale but moving. Elena dropped to her knees, pressing 2 fingers to his neck. A pulse, faint, alive. "See, I told you!" she cried, tears mingling with rain. Alessandro moved closer, his composure cracking, fear shadowing his sharp features. "Get him to the car!" he roared to his men. "Now!" 2 guards lifted the boy carefully, carrying him toward a waiting black vehicle. Alessandro turned to Elena, his fury simmering just below the surface. "Who sent you? How do you know my son?" She shook her head quickly, heart racing. "No one sent me. I'm a nurse. I treated him myself. He was poisoned, not dead. You were about to bury him alive." He stepped closer, towering over her, rain dripping from his hair, his voice a growl. "If you're lying, I'm not," she interrupted, trembling but defiant. I heard his heartbeat. "You have to trust me." He stared at her for a long, tense second, and something shifted in his expression. Something human, fractured, raw. Then a deafening crack split the air, a gunshot. Screams erupted. The priest fell to the ground. Bullets tore through umbrellas and stone, sparks flashing off marble graves. The crowd scattered in panic as more shots echoed through the storm. "Down!" Alessandro shouted, seizing Elena's arm. She stumbled, her heel sinking into mud as he pulled her with him. Another bullet whizzed past, shattering the headstone behind her. Marble dust sprayed across her face. "They're here," Alessandro muttered through clenched teeth, scanning the tree line where shadows flickered under lightning. His men returned fire, shouting into radios. The air reeked of gunpowder and rain. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. She could barely think, her body trembling violently as adrenaline took over. She looked at him, this dangerous man, this father whose world had just come undone. For the first time, she saw the fear behind the fury. "Stay down," he ordered, voice rough but steady. Before she could speak, another burst of gunfire exploded nearby. Alessandro yanked her closer, shielding her with his body as they crashed behind a tombstone. Shards of marble flew past them, cutting into the earth. Elena gasped, clutching the cold stone for cover. Rain and smoke filled the air, mingling with the scent of blood. Alessandro's breath was ragged, his jaw tight. "Don't move," he whispered, eyes locked on the chaos unfolding beyond the graves. Thunder rolled overhead, drowning out her heartbeat. The world had fallen into madness, and as bullets screamed across the cemetery, Elena realized she was no longer an outsider. She was trapped, body and soul, in the middle of a war she didn't understand. Smoke hung in the air long after the gunfire stopped. The scent of metal and rain clung to Elena's clothes as she pressed her hands against the boy's chest, trying to stop the bleeding that had reopened during the chaos. Her palms were slick with crimson, her breath shaking. Around them, Alessandro's men dragged away the fallen, their faces grim and wordless. "Hold him still," she whispered to the guard kneeling beside her. Matteo's small body jerked weakly, his lashes fluttering. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she murmured, voice cracking. The child's pulse faltered, then steadied beneath her trembling fingers. Relief hit her so hard it almost broke her. When she looked up, Alessandro was there, silent, unmoving, eyes fixed on her like a blade. Rain streaked his face, but his expression was unreadable. In that moment, he didn't look like the untouchable Mafia king the city whispered about. He looked like a father watching the world crumble. Hours later, Elena found herself in the backseat of a black car, Matteo resting against her lap as the convoy sped through winding, empty roads. The city lights faded into forest shadows, and soon they arrived at an estate hidden behind iron gates and stone walls. It was beautiful and haunting, golden chandeliers, marble floors, portraits that watched you breathe. Yet the silence inside was heavier than any cage. "This is for your safety," one guard said when she asked to leave. "No one touches the boss's son and walks away free." Elena spent the next hours tending to Matteo in a guest room larger than her entire apartment. Every corridor whispered secrets. She caught fragments of conversation outside her door, names she didn't know, threats that made her blood run cold. "She betrayed us," one man muttered. "Someone inside gave them the funeral time." "Find out who," Alessandro replied, his voice low, sharp. "Before I do." The sound of his steps fading down the hall sent a chill through her. Power and control wrapped around him like armor, yet when she saw him with his son, something fragile peeked through the cracks. By nightfall, the mansion had quieted. Moonlight spilled across Matteo's face, his chest rising steadily now. Elena brushed damp curls from his forehead, exhaustion tugging at her limbs. She turned to pack her bag, only to freeze. Alessandro stood in the doorway, half in shadow. The dim light carved the edges of his face, hard, weary, beautiful in a way that scared her. He didn't speak for a moment, just watched her with eyes that burned and questioned. Then his voice came, low, almost gentle, but laced with steel. "Why risk your life for a stranger?" Elena swallowed, her throat dry. The truth trembled on her lips, unspoken memories flashing behind her eyes. Her daughter's tiny heartbeat, the night she couldn't save another child. But this boy, this moment, had meant something she couldn't explain. She met Alessandro's gaze, voice barely more than a whisper. Because he called for his father before slipping under again. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered, pain, disbelief, something deeper. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing through the long, haunted halls. Days bled into nights inside the Moretti mansion, where silence carried secrets instead of peace. Elena worked in the dimly lit guest room where Matteo lay pale but breathing, the soft beeping of machines the only rhythm in the heavy air. His small hand rested in hers, warm but fragile. She had seen bullets, broken bones, and bruised hearts, but poison was different. It whispered death quietly, leaving no trace but fear. When she ran new tests using the mansion's limited equipment, her blood ran cold. No bullet wounds, no trauma. Just a rare toxin threading through Mateo's veins. Slow, deliberate, cruel. Someone hadn't tried to kill Alessandro's enemies. Someone had tried to kill his son. Her first instinct was to tell him, but her gut whispered caution. In this house, trust was currency, and she had none. So she watched, listened, and waited. The mansion breathed like a living thing. Maids walking too quickly, guards avoiding eye contact, whispers that stopped when she entered a room. The consigliere, a tall man named Ricci, was everywhere, leaning against door frames, pretending to read reports, always close enough to hear but never close enough to confront. Elena noticed how the staff stiffened when he passed. Something about him carried quiet menace. At night, Alessandro came. Every visit began the same way. The soft creak of the door, the scent of rain and cologne, and the heavy silence of a man guarding his pain. He'd stand by his son's bed, his hand hovering over Mateo's forehead but never quite touching. He used to chase fireflies, Alessandro said one night, his voice distant. Wouldn't come inside until he caught one. Elena pretended not to listen, though her chest tightened. She'd never seen power look so powerless. Beneath the steel of his voice there was grief that clawed at him like a wound that refused to heal. "You think he'll wake up?" he asked her suddenly, catching her off guard. She turned to him, eyes soft. "Yes, because he's fighting for you." He looked at her then, truly looked, and something inside him shifted just slightly. For a moment, the mask of the Mafia boss cracked, revealing a man drowning in guilt and love. After he left, she sat by Mateo's side, whispering to him, "Your father's waiting, little one. Don't make him wait too long." The boy's fingers twitched faintly, and her heart leapt. Later that night, unable to sleep, she crept through the quiet halls toward the kitchen. The mansion at midnight was another world. Dim chandeliers, shadows moving like ghosts, the faint hum of voices behind closed doors. She needed supplies, bandages, saline, anything to help Mateo's weakening pulse. But when she entered the kitchen, something stopped her. A light flickered above the counter, illuminating a stack of papers and photographs spread carelessly near the edge of the table. Curiosity tugged at her, stronger than fear. She reached for the nearest photo and froze. Mateo, smiling. Alive, healthy, standing beside a woman with long dark hair and familiar green eyes. A woman Elena had never seen before. But what made her chest tighten wasn't the faces. It was the small stamp in the corner of the photograph, her clinic's logo. She turned it over, pulse racing. The back of the photo bore a date written in neat, black ink, the day before Mateo's supposed death. The photo slipped from her trembling hands, landing face down on the cold marble floor. Outside, thunder rumbled across the hills. Somewhere deep in the house, a door creaked open. Elena's breath caught as she turned toward the sound, her heart hammering. She wasn't alone. Sleep refused to come. The photo burned behind Elena's eyelids no matter how tightly she shut them. Mateo's smile, the strange woman, and that unmistakable clinic stamp. By morning, exhaustion had given way to anger. She couldn't keep quiet anymore. She found Alessandro in his office, a place that smelled of smoke, leather, and power. He was behind the desk, sleeves rolled up, eyes scanning papers like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts. "I need to show you something," she said, stepping forward. Her voice was steadier than she felt. He glanced up, cautious. "What is it?" Elena slid the photograph across his desk. "This was in your kitchen, Mateo, and her." For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then his fingers closed around the picture, tight, almost trembling. His expression changed in slow, painful degrees. Confusion, disbelief, then something raw. Where did you find this? His tone was low, dangerous. Last night, I wasn't snooping, I was looking for supplies. Alessandro, who is she? His eyes lifted to hers. The storm behind them could have torn walls apart. That's my wife, he said finally, voice breaking just enough to betray him. Isabella, Elena blinked. Your wife, but she's dead, he cut in sharply. 3 years ago. A car bomb. His jaw flexed. I buried what was left. Elena shook her head. No, I saw her. His stare sharpened. What did you just say? Outside my clinic. A few days before Matteo was brought to me. Same face, same eyes. I thought she looked familiar then, but I didn't. She swallowed hard. I didn't realize who she was until now. The color drained from his face. His hand gripped the edge of the desk until his knuckles turned white. If what you're saying is true. He stopped, looking past her, past everything. Then Matteo's poisoning wasn't random. Elena's breath hitched. You think she's behind it? I don't know. His voice was tight, haunted. But if Isabella's alive, someone made sure I thought she wasn't. Someone close. And Matteo, he exhaled sharply. Maybe his death was the only way to protect him. The words hung heavy in the air, thick with dread and possibility. Elena's mind raced. Who could have faked the boy's death? And why was her clinic's logo on that photo? The implications twisted in her stomach like a knife. Someone inside this house knows more than they're saying, Alessandro muttered. And until I find out who, no one can be trusted. From that moment, the mansion's atmosphere changed. Guards lingered near her door. Servants whispered behind her back. The walls seemed to listen. That afternoon, when she returned to her room, the air felt wrong. The faint scent of her perfume was mixed with something else, cigarette smoke. Her bag sat slightly open. Papers from her medical notes were gone. Someone had been there. Her pulse pounded. Fear tried to rise, but something harder took its place. Resolve. She wasn't just a doctor now. She was Matteo's last line of defense. That night, she sat by the boy's bedside again, brushing his hair back gently. Whoever did this to you, she whispered, won't get another chance. She forced herself to rest, exhaustion finally winning. The world faded into darkness, until a soft sound pulled her back. A breath. Close. Then, her name. Whispered, slow, deliberate, Elena. Her eyes flew open. The room was swallowed in shadows, but she could see a silhouette standing by her bed, tall, unmoving. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Elena, the voice repeated, softer now, almost tender. She couldn't breathe. The figure took a step closer, the light from the hallway catching the edge of a familiar ring, a Moretti family crest. Her voice barely escaped her lips. Who's there? Silence. Then the shadow leaned closer, and the whisper came again, this time colder, hungrier. Don't trust him. The whisper still echoed in her mind when the figure stumbled into the light. It wasn't a stranger. It was Marco, the youngest of Alessandro's guards, barely 30, his face ashen and slick with sweat. Marco? Elena's voice cracked. What are you doing in here? He staggered closer, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his shirt. I had to warn you. His breathing was shallow, frantic. She grabbed her medical kit, heart pounding. Sit down. Let me see. He shook his head violently. No time. They know you saw the photo. His words broke off into a coughing fit, crimson spilling onto his hand. Who? Who knows? She demanded, pressing gauze to his wound. He tried to speak, but his lips turned pale. Someone inside wants you gone. before the boy wakes. Her pulse froze. Matteo? Why? He met her eyes, desperation flickering. Because he knows... He gasped, his body convulsing. He knows who betrayed... Then his eyes rolled back, and his body went still. No, no, no. Elena's trembling hands pressed against his chest. Stay with me! She checked his pulse, faint, then fading. There was a strange discoloration along his lips. Poison. Again. Her stomach lurched, the same symptoms, the same cruel precision. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to hurt Alessandro. They were erasing witnesses. She was next. The door slammed open, and Alessandro filled the doorway, his presence like thunder breaking through a storm. His gaze swept over the scene. The dead guard, Elena on her knees, blood on her hands. What happened? His voice was ice. He was poisoned. She looked up at him, eyes wet, shaking. He said someone inside wants me dead, before Matteo wakes. For a moment, silence. Then Alessandro's jaw clenched, his fury barely contained. They're inside my walls. He turned toward the hall, barking orders. Lock down the estate. No one in or out until I say so. Boots thundered through corridors. Doors slammed. Radios crackled. The mansion transformed into a cage. When Alessandro looked back at her, the hardness in his expression softened, just slightly. You're not leaving my sight. I don't need protection, she shot back, voice trembling with defiance. I need answers. He stepped closer, shadows cutting across his sharp features. And you'll get them. But first, you stay alive. Hours bled into one another. The house fell eerily silent, save for the distant echo of guards searching rooms. Elena was confined to Matteo's bedside, her sanctuary and her prison. Each time she looked at the boy, pale and still beneath the dim lamp, she felt a promise forming in her chest. She wouldn't let them finish what they started. When Alessandro finally returned, he was no longer the ruthless Don she'd met at the funeral. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow. They found nothing, he muttered, leaning against the doorframe. Whoever did this, they're ghosts. Elena rose slowly, her hands trembling. Then you have to stop trusting everyone. I already don't. His eyes lifted to hers. Except maybe you. The admission hung between them, fragile and dangerous. I didn't save your son for gratitude, she whispered. I did it because he deserves to live. I know. He stepped closer until she could feel the heat of him, the weight of unspoken things. But I owe you more than you think. For a moment, neither moved. The world outside seemed to vanish. The guards, the threats, the poison. Only the two of them remained in that charged silence, two people bound by blood and danger. Then Alessandro reached out, his hand brushing her cheek. The gesture was hesitant, reverent, like a man touching something he'd long forgotten how to feel. Elena didn't pull away. The warmth of his skin against hers made her pulse quicken, confusion and longing tangled deep in her chest. Thank you, he murmured, voice rough. For giving me hope when I thought I'd buried it. She searched his face, the hard lines, the pain behind his eyes, and saw something no one else could. A father, a man breaking under the weight of his own armor. Her lips parted to answer, but then, a sound. Sharp, mechanical. They both turned. Matteo's monitor let out a single shrill note, long, piercing, final, flat line. Elena froze. No! Alessandro's world shattered in a breath. Matteo! He roared, lunging forward as Elena grabbed the defibrillator, her hands shaking so hard she could barely hold it. The monitor screamed on, steady and merciless, as Alessandro's voice cracked through the chaos. Save my son! The sound of the flatline tore through the room like a blade. Elena's body moved before her mind could. Charge to 200! She cried, voice shaking. Her hands pressed the paddles to Matteo's small chest. A violent jolt ran through him. Nothing! Again! Alessandro's voice thundered behind her, raw with fear. Clear! She shouted, pressing again. Her heart hammered so loud it drowned out everything else, the machines, the footsteps, even her own breath. The monitor hissed back to life for half a second, then fell silent again. Elena's throat tightened. She'd seen death before, too many times in the clinic. But this child, this boy she had promised to save, could not die here. Not in front of his father. Not like this. She began chest compressions, each push desperate and trembling. Come on, Matteo, she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. You're stronger than this. Alessandro stood frozen. The man who ruled a city, who commanded fear with a glance, now looked utterly powerless. His hands clenched uselessly at his sides as if he could force life back into his son through sheer will. He's fighting for you. Elena gasped, refusing to stop. Don't you see? He's fighting because he knows you're here. Something inside Alessandro broke. He dropped to his knees beside her, black suit brushing against the blood-stained floor. His hand gripped his son's tiny fingers. Matteo, he murmured, his voice cracking. Papa's here. Don't leave me. Another shock. Another prayer. Then, a flicker. The monitor beeped, faint and uneven, like a heart remembering how to live. Elena froze, holding her breath as the line steadied, pulse returning. Her shoulders slumped in relief, a sob breaking through as she leaned back. Alessandro's head bowed, his hand trembling over his son's chest. He's back, she whispered, smiling through tears. He's really back. But her relief didn't last long. Matteo's breathing was shallow, his skin still unnaturally pale. Something was keeping him on the edge. Elena checked the IV lines, the oxygen, the vitals again. Then she noticed it, a faint discoloration on the veins near his wrist. A purplish tint that didn't belong. She leaned closer, her medical instincts sparking. This isn't just poison, she murmured to herself. This is something else. What did you say? Alessandro demanded. Elena met his eyes. I think I know what's killing him. He rose instantly. Tell me. It's a toxin, she said, voice low. Extremely rare. It's not the same as before. This one's designed to mimic death. His body shuts down completely, even his heartbeat. That's why they thought he was gone. Alessandro's expression hardened. Who could do that? Elena hesitated, then pulled out her phone, scrolling through her database of medical cases. She showed him a reference photo of the exact symptoms. Veins discolored, pupils constricted. This compound was used only once before, she said, in a case up north, Milan, the De Luca syndicate. Alessandro's jaw tightened. My rivals. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. They wouldn't dare touch my blood. Someone helped them, Elena said quietly. Someone inside. The words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. For a moment, the room fell into silence except for the faint, rhythmic beeping of Matteo's heart. Alessandro turned away, fists clenched, staring out the window into the dark stretch of the estate. I built this family from ashes, and now someone wants to bury it again. Elena approached him carefully. We can find out who, but first, Matteo needs an antidote. His head snapped toward her. Do you have one? No, she admitted, but I can make it. If I can isolate the compound, I can reverse it. Whatever you need, he said. You'll have it. She nodded, determination setting in. I'll need access to the lab downstairs, and no one else can know, not until I'm sure. He stepped closer, his presence fierce and protective. You have my word, but if anything happens to him again... His voice trembled, not with anger this time, but fear. I won't survive it. Elena looked at him, truly looked. The cracks behind his power, the grief buried beneath the armor. Then we won't let that happen. They stood in silence, bound by the pulse of a fragile heart between them. Then a sound, soft, almost imperceptible. Elena froze. Did you hear that? Alessandro turned sharply toward the bed. Matteo's hand twitched. His lips moved weakly. She leaned in, tears welling again. Matteo? The boy's eyes fluttered open, unfocused but alive. He looked past Elena, straight at the man beside her, and in the faintest whisper, he breathed one word, barely audible but sharp enough to pierce Alessandro's soul. Mama. Elena's breath caught. Alessandro's world shattered again, but this time, not from fear, because the word wasn't for her. It was for someone else, someone who wasn't supposed to exist anymore. The word mama hung in the air like a shattering bell. Silence fell over the room, heavy with disbelief and fear. Alessandro's hands tightened on the edge of Matteo's bed, as if he could hold the world together with sheer force. His face, usually carved in stone, twisted with horror. Elena? His voice was low, ragged, almost unrecognizable. She's alive? Elena swallowed, heart pounding. I saw her. Outside my clinic. A few days ago, I thought I imagined it. But now? Her voice trembled, caught between fear and revelation. She's the woman in the photo. Your wife? Alessandro staggered back, jaw clenched, eyes narrowing to steel. Impossible, he muttered. She died, I saw it. No, Elena interrupted, urgency lacing every word. Matteo's alive because of what happened. But she's behind this. Poisoning him, faking his death. It's all her plan. She's the traitor. The room fell into tense silence. Even the machines beeped quieter, as if waiting. Alessandro's breath was heavy, each exhale like a storm. She poisoned my son? Elena's lips trembled. Yes, whoever she is now, she's working against you. Against Matteo? Alessandro's hands flexed, veins taut under the pale light. Then she will pay, he growled. His gaze snapped toward the door as he stood, coiled like a predator ready to strike. I'll find her. And when I do, stop. Elena's voice cut through the room. He froze, eyes blazing. No, not yet. Don't act on anger. Matteo's still weak. He needs time to heal. If you go after her now... Her hands fluttered, desperate, pleading. We could lose him again. You have to wait. Alessandro's storm softened slightly, his chest rising and falling. Her words, her calm amidst the chaos, grounded him. He looked down at Matteo, fragile beneath the hospital lights, chest rising in shallow but steady breaths. You're right, he said finally, voice low, laced with both rage and restraint. We wait, but she will answer for this. Everything she's done, she will answer. Elena nodded, though her stomach twisted with dread. Her eyes couldn't leave Matteo. The boy's small hands curled around the sheets, oblivious to the storm building outside. But the knowledge that his mother, his real mother, was alive, close, and dangerous, filled her with a chill that would not leave. Alessandro's phone buzzed. He ignored it at first, but then his guard tapped him with urgency. "Sir, security footage. You need to see this." Elena felt her stomach drop as he grabbed the tablet, swiping through hours of surveillance. Rain pelted the mansion's perimeter, dark shadows moving like phantoms on the screens. Then they froze on one frame, a figure, unmistakable even from the distance, standing just outside the mansion gate. Long dark hair glistening in the rain, posture elegant but deliberate. And the camera timestamp confirmed it. The same night, right now, watching. Alessandro's breath caught. "She's here." Elena's pulse slammed against her ribs. Fear, dread, and a sudden clarity swept through her. She'd seen her at the clinic, thought it a memory, a ghost. But this was real. Alive, dangerous, and closer than anyone could have imagined. The world outside the walls of the mansion had just become a battlefield, and inside, nothing would ever be the same. Smoke curled like living shadows through the mansion's grand halls, thick and choking, turning the gilded chandeliers into blurred halos. Elena crouched beside Matteo's bed, damp hair clinging to her forehead, pulse pounding as she fanned the smoke away from his small face. His breathing was shallow but steady, a fragile thread she was determined to protect. Alessandro moved silently in the corridors above, the weight of his empire pressing down on him. Every footstep, every whispered order to his men carried the tension of a man torn between vengeance and care. Yet in these quiet moments, when the world outside ceased to exist, he found himself drawn toward Elena, her hands gentle, her presence unwavering amidst chaos. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, leaning against the doorway. His voice, usually commanding and cold, held something else, something raw, unguarded. "I don't leave him," Elena replied without hesitation. "Not now. Not ever." He stepped closer. Rain from the broken windows tracing rivulets down his face. And for the first time, he let himself be seen. Not the dawn, not the legend, but the father haunted by grief and guilt. "I've built a world, a life," he murmured, eyes dark, "and it destroyed everything I love." Elena's hands brushed over Matteo's forehead. "I understand," she said quietly. Her own voice faltered. "I once lost a child. To the violence you fight every day. I know the pain." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them, a fragile bridge forged from shared sorrow. The tension of the mansion, the poison, the betrayal, the threats outside, all melted into something softer, tenuous, trust. Then a crackling roar shattered it all. Fire erupted in the hallway beyond Matteo's room, licking the walls and ceiling with greedy orange tongues. Elena grabbed Matteo, yanking him from the bed as smoke and sparks filled the air. The boy coughed, tiny arms trembling around her neck. "Stay with me," she shouted over the roar, shielding him with her body. The fire spread faster than reason allowed, consuming paintings, drapes, and priceless furniture. A gunshot rang through the flames. Someone else was here, and they were hunting them. "Elena!" Alessandro's voice tore through the smoke. She turned to see him charging toward them, coat tattered, hands bleeding, but eyes blazing with purpose. He reached them, scooping Matteo into one arm while gripping her wrist with the other. "Hold on," he barked. "We get out together!" Through the smoke and chaos, they stumbled, the heat pressing against their skin. Each step was a struggle, each breath a battle. Elena's mind raced, thinking of the threats outside the mansion, the poison that still lingered in Matteo's fragile veins, the betrayal hiding behind every shadow. And then, through the inferno, a figure appeared. Movement deliberate, steady, almost unreal against the dancing flames. A tall silhouette emerged, hair dark and slick from rain and smoke. A gun gleamed in her hands, catching the light as she raised it effortlessly. Elena froze, heart slamming against her ribs. Her blood ran cold. It was her. Alessandro's jaw tightened. Isabella. The mansion around them became a battlefield, flames roaring, gunfire cracking, and two lives balanced precariously between fire and betrayal. Matteo whimpered in Elena's arms, oblivious to the history and danger pressing down on them, but she felt it all, the heat, the fear, and the impossible choice that waited just beyond the smoke. Elena's eyes met Alessandro's. The fire reflected in both their gazes, a mirror of their shared determination. But one question burned brighter than the flames. Could they survive her? Flames consumed the walls around them, turning the mansion into a roaring inferno. Smoke choked the corridors, making it nearly impossible to see, but Elena pressed Matteo to her chest, shielding him as best she could. The boy's tiny fingers curled against her neck, trembling with fear. Her heart pounded in sync with the crackling fire, every instinct screaming to protect him. Isabella stood a few meters away, gun raised, her dark hair plastered to her face with soot and sweat. Her eyes, once warm and familiar to Alessandro, were now cold and calculating. "I did what I had to," she said, voice steady above the roar. "I faked my death to protect him, to keep him from your enemies." Alessandro stepped forward, flames reflecting in his eyes, a mixture of love, anger, and disbelief. "Protect him? By poisoning my son? By destroying my life?" His voice cracked, revealing the raw grief beneath the Don's mask. She flinched, as if struck by the truth of her own words. "You made me disappear, Alessandro. You built an empire and I was nothing. A ghost in your shadow. I had to act. I had to control my fate." Elena felt her stomach twist. Every word, every tremor in Isabella's voice carried the weight of history, betrayal, and miscalculated intentions. She pressed Matteo closer, murmuring softly, "Stay with me, sweetheart." "I've got you." The distance between Alessandro and Isabella shrank, tension sparking in the heat and smoke. Guns were drawn and breaths became shallow, each heartbeat a countdown. Elena's mind raced, knowing the slightest move could end everything. A single shot cracked through the inferno. Smoke and sparks filled the room, obscuring the shooter. Elena stumbled back, shielding Matteo with her body. The roar of the flames drowned out the gunfire, but the echo of that single bullet remained, sharp and final. For a moment, time seemed to pause. Alessandro and Isabella stood frozen, eyes wide, searching for answers in the haze. Then smoke cleared. Alessandro's knees buckled, his body sagging forward. Blood seeped through his shirt, a dark spreading stain over his chest. His hand instinctively went to the wound, but his strength faltered. "Elena." His voice was a whisper, edged with disbelief and pain. She froze, Matteo clinging to her, heart pounding in terror. Who had fired the shot? Was it Isabella? Was it an unseen hand or fate itself? The flames roared around them, masking the truth, leaving only uncertainty and fear. Isabella's gun lowered slightly, her expression unreadable. Regret? Triumph? Elena couldn't tell. The mansion, once a symbol of power and legacy, now burned around them, filled with smoke, betrayal, and the uncertain fate of the man who had ruled it all. And through it all, Elena held Matteo, the weight of the boy's life pressing into her chest, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. The world outside the safe house was chaos incarnate, but inside, Elena's focus narrowed to the single point of bloodied flesh in her arms. Alessandro's weight pressed into her, heavy and unyielding, as she dragged him through the smoky streets, past crumbling walls and the remnants of the mansion that had once been his empire. His blood soaked her gloves, dripped onto her coat, but she didn't falter. Each step was measured, each breath a fight against panic. "Stay with me," she muttered, her voice trembling, but determined. Matteo, quiet and pale, clutched her free hand, small fingers gripping for safety and reassurance. "We're almost there." They reached the safe house, a modest building tucked into a hidden corner of the city, walls thin but sturdy enough to shield them from prying eyes. Elena laid Alessandro gently on a makeshift cot. His chest rose and fell unevenly, and blood continued to seep through his torn shirt. "I'll get him stable," she whispered, retrieving a first aid kit from a corner. The equipment was crude compared to the mansion's state-of-the-art facilities, but it would have to do. Every stitch, every bandage, every pressed palm over a wound was accompanied by murmured prayers. She counted heartbeats as she worked, imagining them synchronizing with her own. Alessandro stirred, groaning softly. Pain racked his features, but he didn't speak. When his eyes opened, they were raw, filled with something she hadn't seen before: vulnerability, trust, and something that teetered dangerously close to love. He said nothing, but the way he looked at her, soaked in grief and relief, spoke volumes. "You're not leaving," Elena said firmly, noticing the faint trembling of his hands. "Not until we're certain you'll live through this." Alessandro's lips parted, a faint rasp of acknowledgement. Gratitude flickered, fragile and fleeting, then something deeper, a surrender to the trust he'd long denied anyone. Minutes, maybe hours, passed. She worked tirelessly, ignoring exhaustion, her mind split between healing him and keeping Matteo safe. Her heart thumped with every minor response from him, every sign of life a small victory against the violence and betrayal that had shadowed them. But as the night deepened, her triumph was cut short. Outside, the faintest echo of movement reached her ears, whispered voices, too deliberate to be random, too numerous to be mistaken. Elena froze, pulse spiking. She pressed a finger to Matteo's lips, signaling silence, her eyes narrowing toward the curtained window. The city beyond the walls had already witnessed one war. She refused to let a second claim the life of the man who now depended on her. "They know he's weak," she murmured, her voice tight with fury. "They'll come for him." Alessandro's gaze shifted toward the window, the coldness of reality returning to his eyes. He didn't need to speak. They both understood the peril. Elena stood, positioning herself between Matteo and the door. "I've already buried one man who shouldn't have died," she said, voice low and resolute. "I won't bury another." The sound came then, shattering, inevitable. Gunfire erupted outside the safe house, bullets rattling the thin walls, sending splinters flying. Matteo cried out softly, and Elena tightened her grip on him, pulling him close. Alessandro struggled to rise, but Elena's hands pressed him down gently. "Stay," she commanded. "I will not let them take you. Not now, not ever." Through the pounding of his pulse, through Matteo's frightened sobs, through the echoing gunfire, she prepared herself. Every stitch, every breath, every heartbeat had led to this moment. She would fight, and she would survive, for Matteo, for Alessandro, for the fragile promise of a life that hadn't yet been taken. And as the echoes of bullets rang in the night, Elena's resolve hardened like steel. She would not let this family fall. The night was thick with tension, shadows stretching across the ruined streets like predators. Elena pressed Matteo against her chest, each breath of the boy a reminder of what was at stake. Gunfire echoed in the distance, distant at first, then growing closer, each shot sharper, more deliberate. Her hands were trembling, heart hammering against ribs that felt far too small to contain it. "Stay behind me," she whispered to Matteo, pressing him against the wall of a crumbling building. Her eyes darted through the darkness, scanning for movement. Each step of the approaching men made her stomach twist with anticipation. Alessandro emerged from the smoke, silent, every inch the dawn, yet his eyes softened when they met hers. "We end this tonight," he said, voice low, dangerous. Elena nodded, though her mind screamed at her to protect Mateo first. "I know," she whispered. Her grip on her medical bag tightened, improvising weapons in her mind as fear and courage collided. The enemies closed in, shadows melding with smoke and fire, their guns raised, their intentions lethal. Elena's pulse roared in her ears, and in one decisive moment, she stepped into the open, taking the bullet meant for Alessandro. Pain exploded across her shoulder and chest, her body crumpling to the ground with a strangled cry. Alessandro's roar of fury shattered the night. In an instant, the ruthless boss emerged, every movement precise, lethal, and unforgiving. He carved a path through the attackers, each strike fueled not just by vengeance, but by love and desperation. Elena's vision blurred as consciousness slipped. But she could see him, towering, unrelenting, and yet moments of raw vulnerability flashing in his eyes when he glanced at Mateo. He reached her just as the last of the rivals fell, collapsing beside her. Blood and sweat mingling, chest heaving. Elena's eyelids fluttered open, pain stabbing every nerve. But she could make out Mateo's small form crawling toward her. "Mama," he whispered, his voice breaking through the haze, anchoring her to reality. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the warmth of his small body, the fragile certainty that they had survived. Alessandro sank beside them, his own tears glistening in the dim light, the hard lines of his face softened by relief and gratitude. "You brought my son back," he murmured, voice rough, trembling with emotion. "And you brought me back, too." Elena could only nod, exhausted, her body aching, but her heart full. For the first time, she felt the weight of survival, the triumph of love over chaos. Outside, sirens wailed, growing closer, a reminder that the world still demanded justice, still moved forward, indifferent to the battles won within its shadows. But inside that ruined street, amidst smoke, blood, and fading firelight, a fragile peace settled. Mateo clung to her. Alessandro's hand covered hers, and for one perfect moment, the war was over. The night still smelled of smoke and gunpowder, but in the quiet that followed, life breathed again. Hearts that had been broken, tested, and nearly destroyed were beating in unison, bound by survival, by family, and by love that had endured fire and betrayal. Outside, the sirens continued their distant song. Inside, they were alive, together,